Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So as you know, we've already covered the 2000s, the 90s, and also the 80s. That means in this video, we're going to be looking at the 70s. The further back you go in time, the harder and harder it gets to find these photos. But nonetheless, I've found some real creepy photos with really disturbing backstories. And the worst part is most of these photos look completely ordinary on the surface, as if there's literally nothing wrong with them. So anyway, let's start the video with the very first photo. Robert Hansen with his bow, 1970s. It wasn't an appreciation for nature or the animals, but the kill which appealed most to Hansen during his hunting excursions recalled an acquaintance. Conditions were much the same for his victims, frequently setting the women loose in the Alaskan wilderness and shooting them down with a Ruger Mini 14 rifle, like prized wild game. The friend who took the pictures eerily noted, when Bob was hunting, if the game was in his sights, be it with a bow or with a rifle, he was going to hit what he was aiming at. Eklutna Lake is a beautiful and quiet place in the mountains. It gets its water from melting glaciers. It's very remote, and not many people go there unless they have a reason. One day, two power line workers were in the Eklutna Road area. While working, they found bones in the woods. They called the police, and the state troopers went to check it out. At the scene, they found a skeleton along with some clothes, jewelry, and a pair of tall red boots. But they didn't find anything that could tell them who the person was. When bones are found, they always do an autopsy. That means experts look at the bones to try and learn more about the person. A forensic expert examined the remains and believed it was a young girl, probably in her late teens. She had been stabbed in the back. Since they didn't know her name, investigators tried something called facial reconstruction. They made a model of her face based on her skull. After that, they gave her the name Eklutna Annie. It wasn't her real name, but they needed some way to refer to her. Looking at her clothes and those tall red boots, investigators thought she might have been a ex-worker. Sadly, when ex-workers are murdered, the case becomes much harder to solve. Many of them use fake names and have little or no contact with their families. Back in those days, it was even harder. There was no internet to help find people. In the mid-1970s, things in Alaska started to change. The oil pipeline brought a lot of workers, and with them came more crime and more ex-workers. Anchorage, the biggest city, grew fast. It went from about 60,000 people to 200,000 in just a few years. A lot of bars and strip clubs opened to make money from the new people coming in for the pipeline jobs. Bob worked as a baker. His wife, Darla, was a teacher at a Christian school. They had 2 children. Darla was kind and gentle. She listened to Bob and cared for him in a way no one else ever had. Getting someone like Darla to love him probably felt like a big achievement to Bob, but she wasn't the kind of woman he truly wanted. Bob was an odd guy. He got very excited when talking about things he loved, especially hunting. If he talked too much, sometimes spit would come out of his mouth. He loved the challenge of hunting, sneaking up on animals, getting close, and making the perfect shot. It gave him a thrill. From the outside, Bob seemed like a normal, nice guy, but deep down, he was very different. He had a dark side. A crime expert named Gary Brucato explained that by this time in Bob's life, he had a pattern. He would pick up young women, but one day something went wrong. The woman didn't follow his plan. She ran away. The chase excited him. It reminded him of how he hunted animals, sneaking up, catching them, and killing them. In this case, Bob didn't just give up. He chased her down. He said he crossed a line. After that, if a woman resisted or tried to escape, it only made him angrier. He wanted to punish them even more. The news said he was the worst serial killer in Alaska's history. And just think about it. If Bob got his kicks from killing humans, imagine his actual victim count that nobody knows about. For this guy to be cunning and patient enough to kill a doll sheep with a slow-shooting recurve bow, his human hunting and hiding skills were probably even better. Cindy Paulson was just 17 years old when she escaped from Robert Hansen. Her brave escape helped the police catch him and stop his crimes. Cindy lived in Anchorage with her mom. She was a dancer and sometimes worked on the streets. On June 13th, 1983, Robert Hansen stopped his car next to her. He acted like a customer and she got in the car. But right away, he pulled out a gun and put handcuffs on her. Cindy told the police later, "I tried to fight, but I was scared. I didn't want him to hurt me." Hansen drove her to his house. There, he tied a rope around her neck and tied it to a table. He also kept her hands cuffed. He hurt her for hours. Cindy noticed everything she could. There were bars on the windows and even a bullet hole in the floor. Later, she begged him to let her go. "I told him I live with my mom and won't tell anyone," she said. Hansen told her he had a cabin in the woods. He said he would fly her there in his plane and then bring her back. But Cindy knew that if she got on that plane, she would not come back. She looked around his house and saw hunting awards with his real name, Robert Hansen, not Don, which is what he had told her. That's when she knew for sure he planned to kill her. Early in the morning, around 5 a.m., Hansen drove with Cindy to Merrill Field, a small airport in Anchorage. His private plane was there. He told her to stay in the car and not move, or he would kill her. Hansen walked away to get the plane ready. Cindy saw her chance. Even though her hands were still tied and she had no shoes, she jumped into the front seat, opened the door, and ran as fast as she could. Hansen saw her running and yelled at her to come back, but she kept going and ran to the road. A man in a truck named Robert saw her and pulled over. He picked her up and asked where she wanted to go. Cindy asked to be taken to a nearby motel where her boyfriend was staying. At the same time, Hansen ran back to his car and drove off. But a security guard at the airport saw him and thought he looked suspicious. The guard wrote down the license plate number of Hansen's car. At the motel, Cindy found her boyfriend and told him what happened. The motel worker called the police. When they came, Cindy told them everything: what Hansen looked like, what his house looked like, and what kind of gun he had. The police put her in a car to take her to the hospital. On the way, they passed the same airport where she had escaped. Cindy pointed to Hansen's plane and said, "That's it." Just then, the same security guard from before came up to the police and gave them the license plate number he had written down. The police checked the number with the FAA, the agency in charge of planes. Both the car and the plane were registered to Robert C. Hansen. It took a few more months before police arrested Hansen. But because of Cindy's story and the details she gave, they were able to get a search warrant for his house. Inside, they found many things that proved he had hurt and killed women. Thanks to Cindy, the police were finally able to stop Hansen after 12 years of crime. She had saved not just herself, but many other women too. Cindy's brave escape was turned into a movie called The Frozen Ground in 2013. Actress Vanessa Hudgens played Cindy, and Nicolas Cage played the police officer who helped catch Hansen. Cindy talked to Vanessa before the movie and shared her memories to help her play the role. In 2020, they made a new facial reconstruction of Eklutna Annie, hoping it would help identify her. People still hope to figure out who she was. Many families out there are still waiting for answers. They want to know what happened to their daughters, sisters, and friends. It's so heartbreaking to think about all the young lives that were lost. So many of them had no one to speak for them, and no way to protect themselves. The Bathpool Park, 1972. At first glance, Bathpool Park looks like any other quiet patch of countryside. A peaceful escape where locals walk their dogs, children play, and life feels calm. But under the grass and gravel paths, down in the dark of an old drain, something disturbing was happening. Directly below this spot, on a small metal platform deep inside the shaft, a 17-year-old girl was chained by the neck, alone, terrified, and waiting. Her name was Leslie Whittle, the victim of one of Britain's most chilling ransom kidnappings. On the morning of January 14th, 1975, British police were told that 17-year-old heiress Leslie Whittle had been kidnapped from her bedroom. A ransom note was found at her home, asking for money in exchange for her life. At the time, the police had no idea that the person they were looking for was already Britain's most wanted man, Donald Nielsen, a dangerous criminal nicknamed the Black Panther. This was his first known kidnapping, but not his first crime. Donald Nielsen was born on August 1st, 1936, in Bradford, a town in northern England. He got into trouble from a young age. By age 12, he had already been caught for stealing and damaging property, and because he was still a child, he was only given a warning. Nielsen later joined the army, where he learned how to use weapons. After leaving the army, he got married in 1955 and tried to live a normal life. He worked as a carpenter, builder, and taxi driver, but nothing worked out for him. Instead of working, he turned to crime. At first, he would break into houses at night, sneaking in while people were sleeping. He wore dark clothes and was very quiet, committing more than 400 robberies without being caught, and local police started calling him the Phantom. Soon, Nielsen wanted more money. During one break-in, he found guns and bullets, which gave him a new idea. He started robbing small village post offices. These places had cash but not much security, making them easy targets. He wore army-style clothes, a black mask, and carried a shotgun. He would enter the homes of post office workers at night, point the gun at them, and force them to give him the money. In 1974, his crimes became deadly. That February, Nielsen shot and killed 54-year-old Donald Skepper during a robbery. A few months later, he shot another postmaster, Derek Aston, and badly injured his wife, Marion. She later told the police that the attacker moved quickly, like a panther. The media picked up on the name, and soon the criminal became known to everyone as the Black Panther. Nielsen liked this name. Not long after, he killed again. This time, he shot Postmaster Sidney Grayland and beat his wife so badly that her skull was broken. She survived, but the attack was brutal. By this time, Nielsen thought he was unstoppable. He read about the death of George Whittle, a rich businessman, and learned that Whittle had left a lot of money to his family. Nielsen decided to kidnap someone from the family and ask for a £50,000 ransom, worth about £450,000 today, believing they would pay. He prepared carefully. He rented a garage to hide a stolen car, bought supplies like tape, flashlights, binoculars, and wire, and chose Bathpool Park in Staffordshire as the place to hide his victim. Underneath the park was an old water system with tunnels and ladders, which he believed would help him escape if needed. In the early morning of January 14, 1975, Nielsen broke into the Whittle home. He was planning to kidnap George Whittle's widow, but found 17-year-old Leslie Whittle instead. He forced her to get dressed, tied her up, and carried her to his car. He took her to Bathpool Park, forced her down a 60-foot shaft, and tied her to a ladder with a wire around her neck. She was left on a small metal platform with just a sleeping bag and a flashlight. Then, Nielsen locked the shaft and left her there. The ransom note told the family not to involve the police, but they did. Although the police didn't know how to handle a kidnapping, they thought at first it might just be a joke. Several attempts to deliver the ransom failed. Nielsen made mistakes. Leslie's brother, Ronald, got lost on the way to the drop-off spot. A couple accidentally showed up at the park, confusing Nielsen, and a police officer unknowingly stopped near the spot just to have a cigarette. All of this scared Nielsen, and he gave up and ran away. Leslie was still trapped underground. The police didn't search the tunnels. Kids later found tape and a flashlight in the park, but no one realized they were clues. Finally, the police found the stolen car Nielsen had used. Inside were Leslie's slippers, a cassette of her voice, and his fingerprints. They realized the kidnapper was also the Black Panther, but Nielsen was still free. He wasn't caught until December 1975, nearly a year later. 2 police officers stopped him after he was acting strangely. He pulled a gun on them and made them drive toward Sherwood Forest, planning to kill them. One of the officers pretended not to know the way, giving his partner the chance to grab the gun. During the fight, the gun went off and the car crashed. Locals came running and helped catch Nielsen. He was finally arrested. Later, police searched the area near Bathpool Park again. On March 7th, they found Leslie's body at the bottom of the shaft. She had died from hanging, and it's believed she either slipped or was pushed off the platform. She was cold, alone, and had been left with almost nothing. It was a sad and painful end. Nielsen was found guilty of 4 murders and sentenced to life in prison, where he died in 2011. Even though he admitted to many crimes, he always claimed Leslie's death was an accident. But most people agree that what he did to her was so cruel that he should never have been free again. Dartmouth Street, 1977. Virginia Voskerichian, a 20-year-old Columbia University student, was shot and killed on March 8, 1977, near her home in Forest Hills, Queens. David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam, murdered Virginia Voskerichian as part of a broader killing spree in New York City between 1976 and 1977. This Google Street View image of the eastern side of Dartmouth Street was taken in July 2021. This is the exact spot where Berkowitz shot Voskerichian in the face with a .44 caliber Bulldog revolver. In this image, you can see a photograph of the crime scene on the day it happened and a Google Street View image from April 2021. The eastern side of the apartment complex is visible in the background of both images. In the 1970s, New York City was a very difficult place to live. There were many crimes, the economy was failing, and people were scared. In 1975 alone, there were around 1,800 murders. Then, in 1977, a major blackout added to the city's problems. In the middle of all this, a man named David Berkowitz began a killing spree that would terrify the city. He was a lonely man living in Yonkers, just outside New York City. He had mental health problems and felt strong urges to hurt people, especially women. Starting in 1976, Berkowitz gave in to those urges. Over 12 months, he killed 6 people, 5 women and 1 man. Their names were Donna Loria, Christine Freund, Virginia Voskerichian, Valentina Suriani, Alexander Esau, and Stacy Moskowitz. The murders seemed random, and the killer left behind strange letters. The media started calling him the Son of Sam. People became very afraid. The fear got worse when people realized he seemed to be targeting young women with long, dark hair. Many women began wearing wigs, cutting their hair, or dyeing it to stay safe. During his killing spree, Berkowitz enjoyed scaring people. He wrote creepy letters to police and reporters, saying strange things and calling himself Son of Sam. These letters were confusing and frightening. He even claimed he was ordered to kill by a demon speaking through a neighbor's dog. He later admitted this story was made up to avoid trial and ruin book deals about his crimes. When Berkowitz was arrested on August 10, 1977, police found the murder weapon in his car. He confessed right away. It seemed clear he acted alone, but some people believed he had help. A journalist named Maury Terry thought Berkowitz was part of a satanic cult that ordered him to kill. He said Berkowitz joined the cult because he was lonely and wanted to belong somewhere. Some believe the police called him a lone killer just to calm the city and end the case quickly. Berkowitz also confessed to starting fires. He kept detailed notes in his diary about more than 1,400 fires he had started over the years. He even used to be a volunteer fireman. Some believe he may have set up to 2,000 fires before he started killing people. Before all this, Berkowitz served in the U.S. Army. He joined in 1971 and spent a year in South Korea. He trained with weapons and became a good marksman. He earned 2 military awards, but was also demoted once for poor performance. He was honorably discharged in 1974. While in prison, Berkowitz claimed he changed. He said he became a Christian and now called himself the Son of Hope. He said his interest in dark, evil things led him to commit those crimes, but now he wanted to help others. He started ministering to other prisoners and said he was fighting against evil with God's help. Some Christians saw his story as proof that even the worst people can be saved. After Berkowitz was caught, something else important happened. Many people worried he might become rich by selling his story to movie studios or publishers. Because of this, New York passed a law called the Son of Sam Law, which stopped criminals from making money off their crimes. Today, David Berkowitz is still in prison. His story has changed many things: how the media reports crime, how police handle serial killers, and even how states create laws. Picture of the DeFeo family just before the Amityville horror, 1974. In the quiet town of Amityville, New York, there was a big, beautiful house at 112 Ocean Avenue. From the outside, it looked like a dream home, but inside, it held a very dark and scary secret. In 1974, the DeFeo family lived in that house. Ronald DeFeo Sr. and his wife Louise had 5 children. Their oldest son, Ronald Jr., was called Butch or Ronnie. They also had a daughter named Dawn, who was 18, a daughter Allison, 13, and 2 younger sons, Mark, 12, and John, 9. The family did not live happily. The father, Ronald Sr., was very strict and often angry. The children were scared of him, especially Ronnie. Ronnie felt alone and upset, and he started using drugs and alcohol. He had trouble with his behavior and even got violent. Once, he even pointed a gun at his father. On November 14, 1974, something horrible happened. Ronnie ran into a bar near his house and screamed that someone had broken into their home and that his parents were dead. People from the bar followed him back to the house. When they went inside, they found a terrible scene. All 6 members of the DeFeo family had been shot and killed while they were sleeping. The police were called right away. When they arrived, they quickly became suspicious of Ronnie's story. They found no signs of a break-in, no struggle, and no robbery. Every family member was found lying face down in their beds, shot and killed. Soon, Ronnie's lies began to fall apart. He blamed different people, including a hitman and even his sister Dawn. But eventually, he told the truth. Ronnie confessed that in the early hours of November 13th, around 3:15 a.m., he got his rifle, went into his parents' bedroom, and shot both of them. Then he went room to room and shot each of his siblings while they slept. After that, he cleaned up, got dressed, went to work, and acted like nothing had happened. Later that day, Ronnie faked a phone call to his home and told people he couldn't reach his family. That night, he ran into the bar pretending to be shocked. But police knew better. Ronnie was arrested and charged with 6 murders. His lawyer said he was insane and claimed he heard voices telling him to kill. Doctors agreed he had mental problems but said he knew right from wrong. Ronnie was found guilty and sentenced to 6 life terms in prison. After the murders, the house stayed empty for over a year. Then in December 1975, a new family moved in, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children. They were happy to find such a large house at a good price, but only 28 days later they ran from the house, saying it was haunted. At first, things seemed fine, but soon George began to hear strange noises and voices. Doors slammed on their own. Kathy found a small room that wasn't on the house plans, and it was painted bright red. George kept waking up at 3:15 a.m. every night, the same time Ronnie had killed his family. One night, George saw Kathy floating above the bed while she slept. Then the haunting got worse. The family said they saw ghostly shadows, green slime oozing from the walls, and even knives flying off kitchen counters. Flies filled the house, even though it was winter. Their sons also floated above their beds, and they claimed to see a pig with glowing red eyes watching them from the window. The family smelled bad odors and felt cold spots in the house for no reason. They were so scared, they called a priest named Father Pecoraro to bless the house. But the priest said he heard a voice telling him to leave, and he left before finishing the blessing. That night, the Lutz family left the house and never came back. They told everyone that something evil had driven them out. Some people believed them, but others did not. The Lutzes didn't give many details about what they saw, and some friends said they made the whole thing up. Their former lawyer, William Weber, later said they invented the story together to make money and escape their debts. But the Lutzes said the haunting was real. They even took lie detector tests and passed. Their children also said the house was truly haunted. One of Kathy's sons, Daniel, claimed he was possessed by a spirit during their time there. Another son, Christopher, said the hauntings were real, but blamed George Lutz. He said George was interested in ghosts and spirits, and may have done things to invite them in. Christopher said George used chants and tried to make the ghosts appear. Years later, the house's address was changed to keep people away. Many different families have lived there since then, and none of them have said they saw anything strange. Still, the story of what happened in the Amityville house has been told again and again. Books were written, movies were made. The most famous movie, The Amityville Horror, came out in 1979 and inspired many more films. Kerry Graham and Francine Trimble, 1978. In 1978, two teenage girls from Forestville, California, Kerry Ann Graham, 15, and Francine Marie Trimble, 14, disappeared without a trace. They were close friends and next-door neighbors. On December 16, 1978, just 9 days before Christmas, Kerry told her mother she was going to the Cottingtown Mall in Santa Rosa with Francine to buy gifts. The mall was about 14 miles away. It's believed the girls planned to hitchhike, something that wasn't unusual for teenagers at that time. When the girls didn't come back, their families first thought they had run away. Francine's mother reported her missing the next day, and Kerry's family waited until Christmas Eve to do the same. The police also believed the girls had likely run away, though their families feared something more serious had happened. Neither girl took anything with them. No clothes, no money, not even makeup. In fact, makeup was still sitting out as if they were getting ready. Kerry was still recovering from surgery and wasn't in great shape to travel far. There were no signs of a struggle at Francine's house, so police guessed that if someone had taken the girls, it was either someone they knew or someone with a weapon. Sadly, the investigation at the time was very basic. There was no media attention, and no one at their school was even asked about them. At that time, police often believed runaways would come home soon, so they didn't act fast. 7 months later, on July 8, 1979, two people were driving through Mendocino County, about 80 miles from Forestville, when they stopped on the side of the road near Highway 20. After a small argument, they took a short walk into the nearby woods and noticed something strange: a human skull sticking out of the ground. They left a soda can to mark the spot and drove to the nearest town to call the police. Police and the FBI searched the area and found more bones. There were two bodies, both wrapped in plastic and tied with duct tape. Animals had scattered some of the bones. There were no clothes, only one bird-shaped earring. The bodies had clearly been murdered elsewhere and buried in a shallow grave in the forest. Doctors who examined the bones thought the two were around 14 years old and probably a boy and a girl, maybe even siblings. But they couldn't tell exactly how they had died. There were no obvious injuries, but the idea of strangulation couldn't be ruled out. No one knew who they were. The police called them John and Jane Doe and buried their bones in a cemetery for safekeeping. In 1985, the FBI tried again to find answers using new tests, but nothing worked. In the early 2000s, clay models of the victims' faces were made using their skulls. These were shown to the public in hopes someone would recognize them. Also around that time, DNA tests proved the two were not related. They were both around 13 to 15 years old. But even with this new information, no one came forward to identify them. Police guessed they may have run away from another state and hitchhiked to California. Their names, their story, everything remained unknown. In 2011, the bones were dug up again so new DNA tests could be done using more modern science. A year later, updated computer images of the girls' faces were made to show what they might have looked like. In 2014, it was finally discovered that both victims were girls. The earlier belief that one was a boy had been wrong all along. In 2015, something changed. A family member of Kerry Graham reached out to the police. She had heard about the case and thought one of the girls might be her long-lost sister. DNA samples were collected from both girls' families. Then, in 2016, after 36 years, the bodies were finally identified as Kerry Graham and Francine Trimble. Police admitted that they had never thought to connect the missing girls with the remains found in Mendocino County, mostly because they believed one of the victims had been a boy. Once identified, the girls' remains were returned to their families. Even now, many questions remain. Did Kerry and Francine really plan to go to the mall? Did they hitchhike and meet someone dangerous? A classmate later said the girls had once hitchhiked to a party in Santa Rosa, starting from a Chevron gas station. Maybe that's what they were trying to do again. Maybe they knew someone in Santa Rosa and never planned to shop at the mall at all. Wheaton Plaza, 1975. This looks like any other ordinary mall, but it's actually the Wheaton Plaza, a week after the Lyon sisters disappeared there. It was March 25, 1975, Easter Day. People were happy, enjoying the holiday with family, Some were going out for fun, while others were eating at nice restaurants. John and Mary Lyon were also planning a fun day with their 4 children. Since it was spring break, they decided to go out for lunch at a pizza place called the Orange Bowl in Maryland. Before lunch, 2 of their daughters, Sheila, 12 years old, and Catherine, 10 years old, wanted to do something different. They asked to go see the Easter exhibits at the nearby mall. Mary said yes. She hugged and kissed them and told them to be home by 4 p.m. Mary didn't know that this would be the last time she would ever see her daughters. When the girls didn't return by 4 p.m., Mary wasn't too worried. They had come home late a few times before, but by 5 p.m. she was angry. She thought they were being disobedient. By 7 p.m. she felt something was wrong. She called the police. The search for the girls started right away. It would become one of the biggest missing children cases in the country. Police made a timeline of the girls' movements. The girls left home between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. By 1 p.m., a neighborhood child saw them talking to a strange man outside the Orange Bowl. At 2 p.m., their brother Jay saw them eating pizza at the same place. Around 2:30 p.m., a friend said she saw the girls walking on a street that led to their home, but the girls never made it back. Sergeant Rodney Ingalls led the case. He said that the place where they were last seen was very close to home, but the girls had vanished. There were no clues, no suspects, no motive. It felt like the girls had simply disappeared into thin air. The town was small and quiet. How could something so terrible happen here? Police thought about all the possibilities. Kidnappers often ask for money, but no ransom was requested. A few people tried to trick the family by asking for money, but nothing came from it. John Lyon even left $10,000 at a bus stop after getting a fake message. No one came to collect it. Some thought the girls had run away, but Mary said that made no sense. The girls were happy and had no reason to leave. They loved their family. So what happened? Could they have been killed? Could their bodies have been hidden? The police didn't want to believe that. They said if the girls were buried nearby, animals might have found the bodies. But what if the bodies had been burned or buried deep underground? After 5 years, Sergeant Ingalls left the case. Many other detectives took over after that, but the case remained unsolved. It became a painful mystery for the police and a nightmare for the Lyon family. Even though life had to go on, John and Mary never gave up hope. They dreamed that one day their daughters would come home, smiling and holding hands. Then something unexpected happened. Not long after the girls went missing, an 18-year-old man named Lloyd Lee Welch went to the police. He said he saw the girls being taken by a man, but police thought he was lying just to get a reward. Welch said the man who took the girls walked with a limp, just like the main suspect at the time. But the police ignored him. The case stayed cold for over 38 years. In 2013, Detective Chris Homrock decided to look at the case again. He found Welch's old statement and visited him in prison. Welch was there for another crime. He had hurt a young girl and was serving a long sentence. When the detectives met Welch, he immediately said, "You're here about those 2 missing kids." At first, he denied everything, but then he started talking. He mentioned a man named Ray Molesky, who had once been a suspect. Molesky had died in prison in 2004 after killing his wife and son. Before he died, he bragged in jail that he knew what happened to the Lyon sisters. In 2001, someone had already told police that Molesky might be responsible, but they never found the girls' bodies, and Molesky refused to give more details unless he was moved to another prison. He died before that could happen. A witness in 1975 had also drawn a picture of a man with long hair who was watching the girls. This sketch looked a lot like Welch. After more interviews, Welch finally admitted he had helped kidnap the sisters. He said he thought they were taken for sexual reasons. He also said he had burned one of their bodies, but he claimed he didn't hurt or kill them himself. The court didn't believe that. He was clearly involved, and that made him responsible. He was given another 48 years in prison. He could ask for parole when he turns 80, but his chances are very low. After more than 40 years, police finally had answers. They knew who took the girls, but it still wasn't a happy ending. The Lyon family still didn't know where the girls' bodies were. They couldn't give them a proper burial. At the end of the trial, John Lyon said, "It's been a long, long time, and we're tired. We just want to go home." Rodney Alcala on The Dating Game, 1978. It was 1978. Millions of people across the U.S. were watching a popular TV show called The Dating Game. The show began with three men hidden behind a wall. After the wall moved, the host introduced them. One of them was a man named Rodney Alcala. Jim said Rodney was a photographer who loved skydiving and riding motorcycles. The audience laughed and cheered. Rodney smiled at the camera. He looked handsome and friendly, but there was a dark secret. No one knew he was a killer. He had already murdered people before the show and would do it again after. Rodney Alcala was born in 1943 in Texas. His dad took the family to Mexico when he was young, but later left them. When Rodney was 11, his mom brought him and his sisters to Los Angeles. Rodney had a difficult childhood, but many people do. Still, something inside him wasn't right. At 17, he joined the army, but after a few years, he had a mental breakdown and left without permission. A doctor later said Rodney had an antisocial personality disorder. This means he didn't care how his actions hurt others. Later, doctors would say he also had narcissism and enjoyed hurting people. Rodney went to college and became a photographer. In 1968, he attacked a girl named Tali Shapiro in his apartment. He hit her badly and left her almost dead. Someone saw him with her and called the police. When they arrived, they found the girl, but Rodney had run away. She was in a coma for over a month, but survived. Many years later, she would help put him in prison. Rodney changed his name and moved to New York. He joined a film school and told people he was John Berger. He kept taking pictures, especially of women and girls. He looked like a normal photographer, but inside, he was thinking about killing. By 1971, the FBI had him on their most wanted list. He had already killed again. His victims were often left in strange positions after death. This was his signature. It showed how sick and twisted his mind was. Rodney got a job at a summer camp for kids. One day, two kids saw his face on a wanted poster and told someone. Police caught him and brought him back to California. But there was a problem. The girl he had attacked years before had moved to Mexico with her parents. They didn't want her to go through the pain of testifying in court. So, Rodney only went to jail for a short time. He was released early because the parole board believed he had changed, but he hadn't. Soon after, he was arrested again for giving drugs to a young girl and trying to kiss her. Again, he only spent a short time in prison. Rodney moved back to New York and killed again. One of his victims, Ellen Hover, had written in her diary that she was going to meet a photographer named John Berger. Years later, police realized this was Rodney. In 1978, he was back in California and working at a newspaper. He showed people photos he had taken of many women. When asked about it, he said their mothers had asked him to take the pictures. Then came his appearance on The Dating Game. He won the contest. But the woman who picked him felt something was wrong. She told the show she didn't want to go on the date because he gave off creepy vibes. Other people who met Rodney also said he seemed strange. Not long after that, Rodney killed again. He murdered several women, including an 18-year-old named Jill Barcombe and a 27-year-old nurse named Georgia Wixted. He also killed Charlotte Lamb, a legal secretary, and Jill Parento, a college student. All their bodies were found posed in strange ways. In 1979, Rodney met two girls in Huntington Beach, California. He asked to take their pictures. One of the girls, Robin Samso, later went missing. Her body was found in the mountains. Her friends described the man who took her photo. A police sketch was made, and Rodney's parole officer recognized him. Police searched Rodney's things and found hundreds of photos of women. They also found jewelry belonging to Robin. In 1980, Rodney was found guilty of her murder and sentenced to death. But the case was overturned, and he went through many trials for years. In prison, Rodney acted like he was innocent. He even wrote a book and sued the prison after slipping on the floor. He never showed guilt. Over time, more DNA evidence connected him to other murders. Still, many of the girls in his photos have never been identified. Rodney Alcala may have killed up to 130 people. We may never know the full truth. Today, he is an old man in prison. he has never truly admitted how many lives he destroyed. Genie Wiley's hospital photo, 1970. Genie Wiley was a young girl who lived through terrible sadness. Her story sounds like a sad fairy tale, but it is completely real. There were no happy endings, no magic, and no heroes to save her. Genie spent the first 13 years of her life locked away from the world. Her father was very cruel, and her mother was too scared and weak to stop him. Genie was not allowed to speak or play. She was often tied to a chair or locked in a small dark room. Because of this, she didn't grow properly and looked much younger than she was. By the time she was found, she was almost 14, but looked like an 8-year-old. When scientists heard about Genie, they became very interested in her. They wanted to learn how language and the brain work. But many people later said these scientists used Genie more like a test subject than a person who needed love and care. Genie was born in 1957 in California. Her parents were Clark Wiley and Irene. Her father, Clark, had a hard childhood and was very angry. He didn't like children. He let his first baby die, and another child died from health problems. Only Genie and her brother John survived. Genie's father thought she was mentally disabled, so he locked her away. He tied her to a child's toilet or put her in a cage. He hit her with a big wooden stick if she made noise. He growled at her like a wild dog to scare her. She was never taught to speak or use the bathroom. She lived this way for over 13 years. Her mother, who had very poor eyesight, was afraid to stop the abuse. Finally, in 1970, when Genie was 13, her mother ran away from the house and took Genie with her. She walked into a social services office by mistake, thinking it helped blind people. When the workers saw Genie, they knew something was wrong. She didn't walk normally. She hopped like a rabbit, and she looked much too small for her age. The police arrested Genie's parents, but her father killed him before the trial. He left a note saying, "The world will never understand." Genie was taken to a hospital. The doctors were shocked. She only knew a few words and didn't act like other children. She became famous as the feral child because she grew up without human contact. Scientists wanted to study her. They wanted to learn what happens when a child grows up without language or love. From 1971 to 1975, they studied her carefully. They watched how she learned and behaved. At first, she didn't know how to talk, but she wanted to learn. She liked applesauce and often said, "Applesauce by store." Even though she never learned grammar well, she was smart. She could put pictures in order to tell a story and could build things with sticks. But because she missed the important years to learn language, around ages 5 to 10, she never became fluent in speaking. Some researchers really cared about Genie, but others may have wanted fame and money. Genie lived in many homes, including with some of the scientists. This made things complicated. One teacher, Jean Butler, took her home and tried to adopt her. Other team members said Butler was using Genie to become famous, like the teacher of Helen Keller. Later, Genie moved in with another team member, David Rigler, and his family. For a while, she seemed happy. She liked to touch and explore new things. One man, a butcher, always gave her something small when she visited. A little boy once gave Genie his toy fire truck without her asking. People were often kind to her. But in 1975, the money for her care and study ran out. She had to go live with her mother again for a short time. Later, her mother sued the researchers, saying they used Genie for their own goals. After that, Genie was placed in foster homes, some of which were very bad. In one home, she was punished just for getting sick. She lost the progress she had made and stopped speaking again. Over time, Genie disappeared from public view. Her mother died in 2003. Her brother and niece also passed away. A writer named Russ Reimer tried to learn more about Genie's life, but many of the people who studied her didn't want to talk or blamed each other. The last known report said Genie was living in a care home for adults with special needs in Los Angeles. People who loved her, like Susan Curtis, a linguist who had worked with her, still asked about her, but were never allowed to visit or contact her again. In 2008, Curtis said she had spent 20 years trying to find Genie, but always ran into dead ends. Genie's story is one of great sadness. She was hurt by her family, studied by scientists, and then forgotten by the system that was supposed to help her. Even so, many people still remember her and hope she has some peace and joy in her life now. Tent 8, Oklahoma, 1977. At first glance, Tent 8 looks like any other campsite, quiet, simple, and surrounded by trees. It could be a place where children laugh, tell stories, and fall asleep under the stars. But in the summer of 1977, this very tent at Camp Scott became the scene of a horrifying tragedy, one of the most disturbing unsolved crimes in Oklahoma's history, known as the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. In 1977, Camp Scott, a 400-acre overgrown Girl Scout campground near Locust Grove, Oklahoma, became the site of one of the state's most chilling and tragic unsolved crimes. For nearly 50 years, the case has haunted the community. On June 12, 1977, a group of young Girl Scouts arrived at Camp Scott. Among them were 10-year-old Denise Milner, who had been anxious about the trip, and her tent mates, 8-year-old Lori Farmer and 9-year-old Michelle Goose. The girls were placed in Tent 8, located at the edge of the camp and partially hidden from view. As a thunderstorm rolled in, the girls took shelter in their tent. Earlier that day, Michelle Hoffman, a hopeful camp counselor, had noticed Denise's reluctance and comforted her with friendly support and camp songs, helping to ease her fears. In the months leading up to the tragedy, unsettling signs had emerged at Camp Scott. Unexplained noises in the woods, vandalized tents, missing belongings, and sightings of a strange but oddly polite man. A particularly disturbing incident occurred during a cadet training weekend when a camper discovered her food stolen and a chilling note left behind. Pages torn from a notebook had the word "kill" scrawled repeatedly, along with a message predicting the murder of 3 girls in Tent 1. Camp director Richard Day dismissed it as a prank, but it would soon prove to be a grim warning. During the night of June 12 into the early hours of June 13, eerie sounds and strange movements were reported. Counselors, including Carla Wilhite, were disturbed by groaning noises, the growling of the camp dog Sally, and glimpses of a man carrying a flashlight. A scream from the direction of Tent 8 briefly pierced the night, but was dismissed as a nightmare. At 6 a.m., Carla made a horrifying discovery. Denise Milner's body was found outside the tent, brutally beaten and bloodied. A frantic search revealed that Tent 8 was empty. Lori and Michelle were soon found nearby along a trail, hidden in their sleeping bags. Both had suffered severe beatings and assault. Forensic evidence at the scene included a bloody men's size 9.5 shoe print, a red flashlight with a smudged fingerprint, pieces of newspaper stuffed inside the flashlight to muffle rattling batteries, and other disturbing items like rope, duct tape, and a pair of women's glasses. In a nearby cave, investigators found more evidence, scattered newspapers and a mocking message that read, "The killer was here. Bye-bye, fools." It appeared the murderer had used the cave as a hideout while planning the crime. As authorities searched for leads, a series of misfortunes plagued the investigation. Tracking dogs brought in from Pennsylvania, nicknamed the Wonder Dogs, met tragic ends. One died from heat exhaustion, and another was killed in a road accident. Suspicion soon fell on Jean Leroy Hart, a 33-year-old prison escapee with a criminal history that included kidnapping and rape. Circumstantial evidence linked Hart to the crime, including photographs from a prison photo lab and his known presence near Camp Scott. Despite concerns about racial profiling due to his Cherokee heritage, Hart became the primary suspect. A massive manhunt followed. Hart evaded capture for months until April 6, 1978, when agents found him in a rundown shack in the Cookson Hills. He was arrested wearing distinctive women's glasses, the same type reportedly handled by a suspect in previous assaults. Hart's trial in 1979 was sensational. Although physical evidence, including a bloody shoe print and traces of hair, seemed to connect him to the crime scene, much of the case was circumstantial. His defense questioned the shoe size, the reliability of forensic methods, and even suggested that another known terrorist, William Stevens, could have been responsible. On March 20, 1979, the jury unanimously acquitted Hart. The verdict devastated the victims' families and left many locals convinced of his guilt. Hart, already serving time on unrelated charges, returned to prison. He died of a heart attack while jogging in 1979. Years later, DNA tests on samples provided mixed results. Further testing in 2008 failed due to degradation. In 2017, renewed efforts by Sheriff Mike Reed and a cold case board, along with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, led to new fundraising for advanced DNA analysis. By 2022, investigators stated that the evidence strongly suggested Hart's involvement. However, he remains officially unnamed in connection with the crime. The Girl in the Picture, 1970s. This is the sad and shocking story of a young woman who was trapped in a life full of lies, abuse, and pain. For years, no one really knew who she was. When she died, people thought her name was Tanya Hughes, but that wasn't true. Her real name was Suzanne Marie Savakis. And the man she lived with, Franklin Delano Floyd, was not her husband or father. He was a kidnapper and killer. In 1994, Floyd went to a school in Oklahoma. He said he was the father of a little boy named Michael Hughes. He had a gun and made the school principal bring him to Michael's classroom. Then, Floyd forced both of them into a truck. Later, he handcuffed the principal to a tree and drove away with Michael. The police started looking for Floyd and the boy. They learned something strange. Michael's mother, who people thought was Tanya Hughes, had died in a hit-and-run crash in 1990. At the time, Floyd had put Michael in foster care and then went to jail. After he got out, he tried to get Michael back, but a DNA test showed that he wasn't really Michael's father. The court didn't let him take the boy. When Floyd kidnapped Michael, he disappeared for weeks. He was finally caught, but Michael was not with him. Floyd refused to say where the boy was. Over time, he told many different stories, but none of them were true. Before she died, Tanya worked as a dancer in Oklahoma. She had a baby son, Michael, and a much older husband named Clarence Hughes, who was really Franklin Floyd using a fake name. Her co-workers thought Clarence was creepy and mean. Tanya had bruises and looked scared, but she said she had just fallen. Tanya had a secret boyfriend named Kevin and had planned to run away with him and Michael. But before that could happen, she was found hurt on the side of a highway. She had been hit by a car, but doctors believed it was not an accident. There were marks on her body that looked like she had been in a fight. She died a few days later. After Floyd kidnapped Michael, the FBI talked to someone who used to work with him. That man had a photo of Floyd with a little girl on his lap. He said her name was Suzanne. The agents looked closely and realized that little girl was the same person known as Tanya Hughes. They discovered even more. Suzanne had been kidnapped when she was a child. Back in the 1970s, her real mother, Sandy, left her kids with her new husband, Floyd, while she served 30 days in jail. When she got out, the kids were gone. Floyd had taken them and vanished. Sandy found 2 of her daughters later, but Suzanne and her youngest son were missing. Floyd raised Suzanne as his daughter and gave her a fake name, Sharon Marshall. She was a bright and kind girl who went to high school in Georgia. She was in school clubs, wanted to work for NASA, and got a full scholarship to study engineering. But she got pregnant and gave the baby up for adoption. Floyd didn't let her go to college. Later, Floyd and Suzanne moved to Florida. She worked at a strip club to earn money. She had another baby, Michael, and Floyd let her keep him. People at the club thought Floyd treated her badly. Some believed he forced her into sex work while she was still young. At the club, Suzanne had a friend named Cheryl Camesso. Cheryl thought Floyd was dangerous. She told social workers that Suzanne wasn't reporting her income correctly. Because of that, Floyd and Suzanne lost their government help. Soon after, Cheryl disappeared. Years later, in 1995, a mechanic found an old truck that used to belong to Floyd. Hidden under it was an envelope with disturbing photos. Some showed Suzanne, others showed a woman who had been beaten. Around the same time, police found bones near a highway in Florida. They were from a woman with breast implants. By comparing the photos and medical records, police learned the remains belonged to Cheryl Camesso, the same woman who went missing in 1989. Floyd had killed her too. After Cheryl's murder, Floyd and Suzanne got married under fake names. They became Clarence and Tanya Hughes and moved to Oklahoma. This way, no one would know that he had kidnapped her and that she was not really his wife or daughter. In 1995, Floyd was arrested and sent to prison for kidnapping Michael Hughes. In 2002, he was sentenced to death for Cheryl's murder. Finally, in 2014, he told the FBI that Tanya was really Suzanne Marie Savakis. He also said he killed Michael after the kidnapping, but the boy's body has never been found. In 2022, Netflix released a documentary called Girl in the Picture. It tells the heartbreaking story of Suzanne, who lived a life full of lies, fear, and abuse. Even though her life was stolen, many people still remember how smart, kind, and full of dreams she was. Now the world finally knows who she really was. Congressman Leo Ryan, 1978. Congressman Leo Ryan at Jonestown speaking to Jim Jones' People's Temple cult on November 17, 1978. He was killed by Jim's security guards the next day on November 18th. That day, 918 other people also perished in what has become one of the darkest chapters of American history. On that fateful day in November, everyone at Jonestown was coerced into taking their own lives by drinking poison, while armed guards ensured compliance from those who hesitated. Nearly 1,000 individuals, isolated in a remote jungle compound in Guyana, embraced death under the influence of a charismatic leader's conspiracy theories. To understand why nearly 1,000 people lost their lives at Jonestown, we must consider the context of the 1970s. A time when many sought an integrated, equitable society free from racism and inequality. For the followers of Jim Jones, the People's Temple promised this vision. Jones himself, once a respected figure in the civil rights movement and founder of one of the first racially integrated churches in the Midwest, had gained a reputation as a social justice warrior. His early work earned him the support of influential leaders and the admiration of a diverse congregation. However, Jones's ambitions extended beyond religious leadership. To attract followers and funding, he delved into faith healing, performing elaborate hoaxes that he rationalized as necessary for a greater good. These early deceptions set a precedent for the manipulation and control that would only grow more dangerous over time. As the 1970s progressed, Jones's behavior became increasingly erratic and paranoid. He spoke frequently of an impending doomsday, often blaming a corrupt government for the looming catastrophe. Despite his paranoia, Jones retained the support of prominent political figures, including First Lady Rosalind Carter and California Governor Jerry Brown. However, a series of defections from the temple brought intense media scrutiny, revealing scandalous behavior and abuses of power. Faced with mounting criticism, Jones decided to relocate the People's Temple to Guyana, drawn by its socialist government and lack of an extradition treaty with the U.S. There, in the dense jungle, the temple constructed what was meant to be a utopian commune, a pure Marxist society. But life at Jonestown quickly turned grim. Followers endured grueling labor, hunger, and constant propaganda in the form of lectures and films. As Jones's mental and physical health deteriorated, he became increasingly reliant on drugs, further exacerbating his paranoia and instability. Conditions at Jonestown grew harsher by the day. Jones's speeches, broadcast incessantly over loudspeakers, became more incoherent and apocalyptic. Followers were subjected to harsh punishments, including confinement in small boxes or being left in dry wells overnight. Some were beaten for minor infractions, while others were forced to participate in white night drills, rehearsals for the ritual of mass death. By the time U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan arrived in Guyana to investigate reports of mistreatment, Jonestown was teetering on the brink. Despite an initial impression that most residents were there willingly, a small number asked to leave with Ryan's delegation. This triggered Jones's paranoia. Convinced that the government would soon destroy everything he had built, Jones ordered his armed guards to attack Ryan and his party at a nearby airstrip, killing 5, including the congressman. The murder of Congressman Ryan marked the point of no return. Jones gathered his followers and told them their enemies would soon descend upon them. Faced with the imminent arrival of authorities, he presented revolutionary suicide as the only dignified option left. He urged his followers to drink cyanide-laced fruit punch, telling them it was better to die peacefully than to be captured and tortured. The final moments were captured in a chilling audio recording. Jones can be heard urging calm, reassuring parents that their children would suffer no pain, and castigating those who expressed doubts or hesitation. As the poison began to take effect, the compound descended into chaos. Children screamed and parents wept, yet Jones remained detached, issuing commands and urging his followers to finish what they had started. When Guyanese authorities arrived at the Jonestown compound the following day, they were met with a horrifying sight: hundreds of bodies strewn across the ground. The dead included nearly 300 children who had been given poison by their parents. Among the adults, many were elderly or dependent on others for survival. Jim Jones was found dead from a gunshot wound to the head, having chosen to avoid the poison himself. The Jonestown tragedy is often referred to as a massacre rather than a mass suicide, given the presence of armed guards and the clear signs of coercion. While some members may have believed they were participating in yet another drill, for others, there was no escape.